Stay tuned for tonight's adventure with the Fat Man.
Okay, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whatever time of day it is, I hope it's good to be where you are, because I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Baltimore Fats, and the Penningtons are ghosts in the machine. Yeah! Okay, have fun, guys. All right, so we left off talking about Billy the Kid here, right, and his father, Josiah Pennington, and something I'm calling the Pennington Effect, which is what I see as the deliberate obfuscation of someone's past, perhaps, right, or their possible role in what the gatekeepers present to us as our history. Because I'm finding a lot of inconsistencies while trying to put together this Pennington story, which may not be all that unusual because as a false paradigm speculator, one always has to keep in mind that much of the gatekeeping information out there on the interwebs, right, is user input. Anybody can go in and edit and add information to a wiki page. Genealogy pages are built with user input. So when things don't add up, some of that can be attributed to user error, for lack of a better word. However unintentional it may be, users can input wrong or incomplete information for any number of reasons. The biggest, of course, being ignorance, right? They just don't know that they're wrong or could be wrong. And that's fair enough, right? But there's always the possibility, especially with some of these important, influential families, that the information is deliberately misguiding. I've shown a few examples over the years of gatekeeping information being changed in real time, concurrent with whatever subject I'm looking at, right? I mean, I've shown it happen, right? Is that a coincidence? Right? I guess it could be, right? But then there's the other information the web gives us, right? The articles, the books, web pages, not curated with public input. They're academic or professional in some other fashion, right? It's when these sources don't line up that the story gets really interesting, right? And we have another great example of that within the Pennington family. This Pennington story is unbelievable, right? And so, and of course, it all begins back with Douglas Thomas Jr.'s accident on Pennington property, right? And the tenuous connection between this property and Billy the Kid and Josiah's family. And that's because there is another Pennington who casts a very long shadow over this story. Now, I can't remember why he didn't come up at the time, whether I didn't know about him or perhaps I was keeping him in my back pocket for some other reason, because I did go back and watch the first 2 episodes of Baltimore, Welcome to Baltimore and Dead Man's Curve, right? And so again, I can't remember why his name didn't come up in those Baltimore episodes, because his name is, wait for it, it's Josiah. It's young Josie Wales. He's Josiah III, the best I can make of it. And as I said, I've known about him for a while, and maybe even have mentioned his name somewhere along the way because young Josiah here is a very prominent and well-respected architect here in Baltimore as a partner of the firm of Baldwin and Pennington. Right? Based in Baltimore, the firm designed an incredibly large number of prominent structures throughout the Middle Atlantic region, especially as the house architects of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, including many of its stations and other major buildings. And so now when I read that they were the house architects for the B&O Railroad, and I couple that with the fact that Douglas Thomas Jr., the architect for the brand spanking new B&O Railroad building in 1906, is found dead on Pennington land, I don't know about you, but I'm catching the faint aroma of motive, right? Maybe it burned young Josiah's here, who actually would have been about 50 in 1906 when this went down. Maybe it really burned him to lose that contract for the new headquarters building to a rival. After decades of faithful service for the B&O Railroad, building stations like this one in Oakland, Maryland. And I think this is a pretty cool looking little train station. And they say this was built in 1884. Right? And he also built what may be my favorite train station, which is the train station here in Baltimore City in Mount Royal. And here's 2 different looks at it, right? And unfortunately, I am never on foot in this area, so I don't have any good pics of it from my own archives, right? And this is the best I could come up with. But this is one of my favorite stations because when I first heard of the mud flood idea, this building immediately came to mind because it's always piqued my curiosity because of its design, where it's located and how it looks, right? It's on the top of, and I'm going to demonstrate this in Google Earth a little bit, I hope. Right? It's on top of a hill, but it is dug out of a ditch. I mean, it really looks like it's just in a pit or crater or something, and I'm going to show you. And so when I first heard the mud flood idea and the idea that, some of these older buildings could be recovered buildings and that they were just kind of dug out, this building made a lot more sense to me. All right, so let's see if I can catch it on Google Earth. All right, so now this is Mount Royal Station here off to the left here, right? And this little pocket here is really, it's a ditch. It's a crater. It's a dimple in this hill, right? And this is a hill going up, coming down from like the 5 o'clock position here and cutting across up to like 11. All right, this is a hill, right? And it kind of peaks up somewhere around here, I think. And so not quite the top. And so let's bring our guy down. And we're going to put him, we'll put him here. All right, so this is about as good as I could get it on Google Earth to show you, of course, they have a tree in the way, right? But here's the grade of the street, right? And it's definitely an incline, right? This is a hill and it connects to the highway. I can't exactly remember, what the peak of this hill, what's on the top of it, but you can kind of see where the land and the top of this building kind of meet, right? And it's very apparent when you're walking at eye level because this building certainly appears to be dug or trenched out of here, right? And we'll bring it back to the pictures, right? All right, so this layer here below these awnings or whatever, right? That is all down below. When you're walking up the hill and approaching Mount Vernon, and didn't know, you would think that this was the first level, the ground level of the structure, right? Because it's a steep drop to get into this pit here. This little pocket, this thumbprint. So Josiah is building railroad stations for the B&O, right? He's building bank buildings for Merchants National Bank, which I'm sure was the most prominent bank in Baltimore City. And who knows, maybe other cities in America as well. I don't know. Right? He also built the power plant, right? This series of warehouse structures that at one time generated all the electricity in Baltimore City, I guess. I don't know. And today is the staple, the anchor for the whatever's left of the Baltimore travel industry in the Inner Harbor anyway, It's really rather bleak down there. And he also designed the headquarters for something called the Maryland Club. Founded in 1857, the same year as the Peabody, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. One of the oldest private clubs in the United States that was founded as an exclusive men's club, right? And that's large Romanesque clubhouse. It dates to 1891. So we have a date on this thing for Josiah Pennington. Right? And it's located in Baltimore's historic Mount Vernon neighborhood. And if I ever get around to my Mount Vernon sightseeing tour, I have pictures of it. It says that the club's members have traditionally numbered among the region's most prominent business, professional, civic, and nonprofit leaders. Though membership is by invitation only, the club says it wants a diverse membership of outstanding individuals regardless of race, gender, religion, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Right? How very progressive of them. This Maryland Club, this exclusive men's only club, right? Exclusive men's club today wants all this diversity. It's very interesting considering the political and social and cultural climate of the day and how chaotic it is. Right? It's really out of control. And, maybe that all goes back to the Maryland Club and some of these people. I don't know. But, it's interesting that they want all of this when in 1861, the club supported the secession of the Confederate States of America. Right, so here we go, Mary. Right? Does this mean that the Penningtons supported the secession of the Confederate States? And then by extension, does that mean Peabody did and Riggs, some of these other names that we've been looking at recently? Did they all support the secession of the Confederate States? And what could that mean? We're talking about some of the richest, most influential people in America essentially supporting the Confederate States. I don't know, that you gotta let that needs to sink in here. Right? But it's really unbelievable. And so regardless of all of this, because of these buildings, Josiah is the man with the architectural plan, right? Everybody wants his designs. Banks want his designs, railroads, power companies, The top politicians and philanthropists of the Maryland Club, they want his designs, and it's endless. I mean, he designs hundreds of buildings all over the Mid-Atlantic region. All right, and so I bet it stung pretty good when Douglas Thomas stole the headquarters building. And when thinking about the idea of Douglas Thomas's death as ritual sacrifice, possibly connected to the Penningtons, I think it's very curious, very interesting that Josiah Pennington designed this building. And this is the Hutzler Brothers building on, where else? Howard Street. And this building, and I showed a sampling of it in the Pan video, I believe it was. And I kind of wish I hadn't done that now, but without getting into the who's and whys of this building, who built it, and because this building is going to get an episode of its own someday, let's just take a quick peek at some of the strangeness of this building. All right, so we're going to take just a quick look at some of this, right? We're going to start by going up the side of the building here, right? The right side. And somewhere, this is probably about 6 foot off the ground about here, right? And so I'm guessing the first face we're going to see is, let's see, where is he? There he is. Right, he's here. He's an easy 15 or more feet off the ground. Right? There he is. Right? He's got an interesting third eye pattern happening there. Right, going up to along this banner here. Got 3 on this side. You got 3 in the middle. You got 3 at the end. You've got weird faces hanging out in here. All right, this is on the side of this Hutzler Brothers building right on Howard Street. The light rail goes by it every day. At one time, this building was a cornerstone of Baltimore's thriving pedestrian retail district. And so I think you guys get the idea, because I'm going to feature this more. I'm going to go over every inch of that building at some other time. So just very interesting that all of this weird pagan stuff would be on this Hutzler Brothers building designed by Josiah Pennington, right? Who from here on in the story is going to be known as Rawhide, because I really am thinking of this revenge factor, and that he just felt so burned by losing that contract. But as I was saying, I knew about him. I had known about him for a while, so when I found out about the president of the BOT, I immediately thought that he must be Rawhide's dad, right? It just had to be. And while digging around and looking for information on Rawhide here, the Baltimore Architecture Foundation confirmed it, right? Josiah Pennington was born in Baltimore in 1854, the son of a prominent family. When he was 20, his father, a lawyer and president of the Board of Trustees of the Peabody Institute, right? So there it is, right? He's Josiah's father. So that would make Rawhide here Billy the Kid's younger brother. Rawhide being born in 1854 and Billy the Kid in 1829. So that's a 25-year age difference between the two, making Pa Pennington over here 57 years old when Rawhide was born. And that's not unheard of, right? Especially in those days. And now again, this is where things start to get interesting, because I believe that family histories can be muddied or buried with bad genealogy and things, right? Bad gatekeeping, or good gatekeeping, as the case may be, right? Because it's very curious to me that Pa Pennington's Find a Grave website doesn't mention young Josiah over here at all. And here we are, right? Scrolling down, Josiah Pennington, born the 2nd of June, 66. And that's a recurring number in this story. Yeah, are you shocked? Dies the 22nd of May, 1874 at 76, right? So this is our guy, right? So he's scrolling down to see who his family is. All right, family members, they have his wife here, Sophia Cook Clapham Pennington, and his children, Charles Josiah Pennington, born in 1826. So that's not Rawhide, who was born in 1854. And here we have Billy the Kid, born 1829. And then we have Sophia Catherine, named after the mother who doesn't make it. She dies at 1. I don't know, I see this. I'm sure you guys know where my mind has taken me with that. But there's no Josiah, there's no Rawhide. How could that be? How could something like that be missed? Rawhide was one of the most prominent architects, designed a million buildings, right? What kind of genealogist would miss this, right? It's very strange. All right, so continuing my diligence, I found this in the Maryland archives. Josiah Pennington was born on January 24th, 1854, son of Charles Josiah. So not the outlaw Josiah Pennington, all right, this would make him his grandson, all right, and to one Elizabeth Taylor Winder Pennington. And he attends St. John's College in Annapolis and marries one Margaret Riggs Pleasance. Now you better believe that this Margaret Riggs Pleasance is related to Elisha Riggs. It's there. I don't know exactly how close, but very interesting that the names can be connected in this way, the Penningtons and the Riggs. But more importantly, it says that he's the son of Charles, hereafter known as Chuck, or maybe the Rifleman, depending on how it's going. All right, so that would make Billy the Kid and Rawhide not brothers, but uncle and nephew. The Rifleman being Billy the Kid's older brother. And I think here's as good a time as any to mention that however this shakes out, Rawhide here, young Josiah Pennington, would have been about 17 or 18 years old. And I most certainly believe, seeing the way his life shakes out, that he was there. And this is something that I want to keep in mind as this story unfolds, right? And that it's either his brother or his uncle who is stomping around as Romulus at this thing. But the question I have is how does the Baltimore Architecture Foundation get this wrong? If his father is really Charles, this seems like a really big mistake, and one that's easily corrected with a little fact checking, maybe. Right? It's just embarrassing. I would be embarrassed if I was a member of the Baltimore Architecture Foundation's publicity team or whatever, and this mistake got out there. Yeah, it's embarrassing, right? Unless the Baltimore Architecture Foundation is working from different sources. Sources like letters from the AIA, which is the Baltimore chapter of the American Institute of Architects, one of the oldest AI chapters in the country. And Rawhide here, young Josiah, he serves as president of the Baltimore chapter. So maybe the Baltimore Architecture Foundation has some notes, memoirs, or some other things of Josiah here that the Maryland Archives doesn't have access to. And that maybe the Baltimore Architecture Foundation just didn't get the memo, right? That the gatekeepers were going with the Rifleman as Josiah's dad and not Josie Wales, Josiah Pennington the Elder, I guess I'll call him here. And that no one ever caught or cared about this mistake because who the hell is ever going to go looking for this stuff? Unless you were really digging, you were never going to notice. Right? Who's looking at Josiah Pennington, the architect, 100 plus years after his death? This guy, that's who. Right? And so, could this discrepancy, could this just be an attempt by the gatekeepers to hide something concerning the outlaw Josie and young Josiah here, Rawhide? A little sleight of hand, perhaps, to hide a longer-lived, pure bloodlined individual. I mean, it just wouldn't do to have an 80 to 100-something-year-old man designing all of these buildings in the late 1800s and early 1900s, now would it? Right? No, not at all. Right? And so I certainly believe that there are some long-lived people on this realm. How old they can get, I really have no idea. But for the sake of this story, let's just say a person with a bluer bloodline, a more pure bloodline, can live to be something like 150 years old, or about double the lifespan of today. And they would age sort of accordingly. A 25-year-old to these people would be like a 12-year-old to us. Just for an example here, he could be 100 years old and look like this, is kind of what I'm pitching here. Because when you're actively writing part of the script, as Josiah Pennington, Josie Wales here was, as president of the BOT, so if you're writing that script, right, for the future, and 150-year lifespans aren't a part of that future, or at least it won't be for Gen Pop anyway, then you need to hide your own longevity. And one way you do that is by giving everyone in the family the same name, right? So it's sort of really impossible, unless you were actually there 300 years ago, to prove that, all of these Josiah Penningtons in a row weren't the same Josiah Pennington. You have to take some biographers or genealogists' word for it. I mean, there's just no proving it at this point. That's ridiculous, right? So if you're looking to hide how long you live, that's one way to do it. And of course, one way to do it would be to fake your own death and assume a new identity, Highlander style, like Connor McLeod, right? And believe it or not, I think I may have caught them pulling off this very switcheroo. Because let's just take a look at how Josiah the Elder, let's take a look at how he dies. So when Rawhide is 20, right, his father, or not his father, right, he was accidentally killed in a building being demolished for an addition to the Institute. Wait a minute. He was accidentally killed in a building being demolished? How does that happen? The man was 78 years old. So I have to find out more about this, right? But the gatekeepers really offer nothing. So I had to go to our old friend, the Sun, and only found this. And this is from May 23rd, 1874, and it's a brief obituary for Josiah Pennington. I was really surprised by how little came up in the Baltimore Sun over the death of this very prominent Baltimore citizen, president of the PBOT, like I said, and the lawyer, and, and with who his family is and everything like that, right? And so it says that, the death of Josiah Pennington, Esquire, a prominent lawyer of this city, took place yesterday at 7:45 a.m. at his residence, number 251 North Charles Street. Mr. Pennington was president of the Board of Trustees of the Peabody Institute. His former residence, adjoining the Peabody Institute, had been purchased by the Peabody Institute for an extension of the Institute buildings, and was in the course of demolition. Mr. Pennington, upon going into the building for some purpose on Thursday afternoon, stumbled and fell among the timbers. Upon being picked up by the workmen, he was found insensible. Dr. Buckler was sent for, and Mr. Pennington became afterwards perfectly conscious. 2 of his ribs were found to be broken, which caused laceration of the internal organs and brought on pneumonia, of which he died, as above stated, in the 78th year of his age. A couple of interesting things to note here is the residences, right? This is where he died, right? And where his former residence, which collapsed on him, killing him in the end, where they were located. So I'll show you that real quick on Google Earth. Okay, so here we have Mount Vernon and the Peabody Institute right here. I believe the building they're talking about, like his house was here, right? And that's what collapsed on him. And they were raising that house right, to build this extension, which is called Leakin Hall today. Now, of course, that is unconfirmed. It's just my suspicion, but I think that's where he was living, right? That close as president of the BOT. And so now where he died, which is 251 Charles Street, right? That's down this way, all right? And I'm just going to show you, I'm going to do it twice, right? Here's the Basilica here. We're coming down Charles now. They put 251 here, and I'm just going to put it in just to show you how they do it. Certainly looks to me like he's living either at St. Paul's or at the YMCA, which would have been across the street. So I don't know what was at 251 back then. But this is where Google Earth puts it today. There's markets, modern stuff over there. But just really interesting that this is where they would put the death spot, the death location of Josiah Pennington. And so the question I have is, was there no one on site on this Thursday afternoon when, for some purpose, Josiah Pennington stumbles into his old house, which is being demolished? Nobody to say, hey, old timer, that's dangerous up there. You might not want to go up in there, or at least help him, go in there and find whatever it was that he may have been looking for. Or could it be possible? Did a 78-year-old man really walk into a building that was collapsing? Or did a man who maybe looked more like this, perhaps in theatrical old age makeup, maybe with a little beeswax in there, did he walk in that building and out the back door his own grandson? But I'm thinking more and more that that's the case. And what happened was they found the old drunk bum Patsy that they dragged in there all beat up the night before, who wasn't supposed to survive the demolition. Some poor bastard who woke up in a hospital bed and said, I feel fine, and then they killed him, right? From pneumonia and 2 broken ribs that caused internal lacerations, so they say, right? I don't know, but I do know that this type of apophonetic dot connecting, right? All this speculation would not be possible if the gatekeepers didn't contradict each other. How is it the Maryland State Archives has his father as Charles, right? But the Baltimore Architectural Foundation has his father as Josiah here. And in another sterling example of the Pennington Effect, just like with his brother Billy the Kid here, I could find nothing on Chuck the Rifleman, right? The alleged father of Rawhide the Architect. And for Billy the Kid here, he was the father of R.G. Harper Pennington. Whose leg do I have to hump to find out what either of these men did for a living? How is it possible that they don't, either one of them, have a one-paragraph wiki page that says, William C. Pennington, father of R.G. Harper Pennington, birth and death dates, yada, yada, was president of some railroad or other, or bank or other, or was a lawyer or something. For goodness sake, everybody was the president of a bank or a railroad back in the day with his type of connections. How is it that they don't even have that type of brief mention in Wikipedia with the children that they have and the father that they have? It's really kind of crazy. Now, how the gatekeepers of Wiki and Google really are doing their best to bury these Pennington men. They are a machina, right? They're ghosts in this machine. And it doesn't end here, right? The Pennington Effect has far-reaching ripples, right? Which are ironically in wiki form. Because when I went looking into Rawhide, I searched him as Josiah Pennington Jr., right? Believing that he was the son of Josiah Pennington the Elder. That's what the Baltimore Architectural Foundation told me. But when I searched him as Junior, what came up was very interesting. I found out that this is actually Josiah Pennington the Second. All right, so now this is something called WikiTree, right? A branch of Wikipedia, right? Where genealogists collaborate. I'm sure they do. All right, so they have Josiah Pennington the Second, born the 2nd of June, 66, as, keeps coming up. All right, 1797, this is him. Right? And here I get more information from this wiki genealogy page than I did from Find a Grave or Genie or anything like that. Interesting thing, it says spouses unknown, yet we know who his wife was. Sophia Cook Clapham Pennington. And I'm certainly glad this slide didn't fall by the wayside. Children unknown, yet we know who his kids are. The Rifleman and Billy the Kid, right? They're on the books. And so, again, further underscoring the craziness with this Pennington genealogy. And so now I can't follow everybody, but I did want to follow his parents, right? I always looking to go back, right? So how far back can we go with his dad, Josiah Pennington? And of course, they're all Josiah. Right? And it says he's born about 1840, right? Location unknown, right? Son, father unknown, mother unknown, right? So, you get the big nothing here, just dead ends with his dad, right? But with his mother, his mother's name is Jemima Hanson, right? So I wanted to click on that. The Hanson name always kind of rings a bell. And, it says that she was the daughter of Jonathan Hanson. And when I saw that, I had to think for a second. I was like, wait a minute, Jonathan Hanson, wasn't that the first president of the Congress? Right? And here he is, essentially the first real president of the United States, right? First president of the Confederation Congress. One of these founding fathers that you don't really hear all that much about today, for, I don't know, kind of curious reasons maybe, I don't know. But there are so many Jonathan Hansons in the history that this just has to be a coincidence, right? So following this Jonathan Hanson back, the grandfather of the outlaw Josie Pennington, right? He goes from Baltimore County to Anne Arundel County to Lynn, Massachusetts. Are you kidding me? This is where Lynn is. Look, it borders Salem and Peabody. It's a stone's throw from Danvers, Beverly, right? It is right in this area, right next to Peabody, right? Where Elizabeth Peabody is from, where George Peabody is from. So I have on Josiah Pennington's mother's side, Hansons going to this Lynn. And so now I had to know, right? Is there a way that I could connect these Hansons who make their way to Baltimore County via Anne Arundel County? Could they be related in any way, shape, or form to these Hansons who go on to be everything that I've been saying, right? From Charles County, Mulberry Grove, Mulberry being Route 40 that runs right along next to the Basilica. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So how can we trace this back, right? So he was the son of Samuel Hanson, right? So let's go there, right? Born 1721. Right, Samuel Hanson, who was the sheriff of Charles County. the sheriff. He was born in 1685, so we're talking like the early 1700s here, in service to the crown as sheriff of Charles County. Where do we see sheriffs but in these royal forests? I mean, it's just getting unbelievable. And you want to talk about loyalty, right? So his father, the first president of the of the Confederation's father, was sheriff. I mean, this is unbelievable. How loyal could he have been, John Hanson? It's just unbelievable, right? So continuing with this Hanson line, let's keep it going. How far? Charles County, man. Can I get them into Anne Arundel? Can I get them to Baltimore County? Charles County, and then wah, wah, right? Of course, siblings unknown. The line just dies. Barely 3 generations. So I don't know about you, but I certainly believe it's possible that if these Hansons, can get from Lynn to Anne Arundel County to Baltimore County, they certainly could have gotten to Charles County, right? So it's possible that it is absolutely possible that the Penningtons and the Hansons, he's backwards, and the Hansons could be related. But it seems more probable than not to me at this point because of this unbelievable coincidence. And so I don't know if I mentioned, I went back and I watched the first 2 episodes of Baltimore, Welcome to Baltimore and Dead Man's Curve. And I'm glad that I did, because in that episode, I connect Douglas Thomas Jr. to John Hanson. John Hanson is Douglas Thomas Jr.'s great-great-grandfather, right? And so now, with the possibility that they're related to the Penningtons, this is unbelievable. So that means if the Thomases are related to the Hansons and the Penningtons related to the Hansons, well, then the Penningtons and the Thomases would be related to each other. They would be of the same bloodline, which just adds a whole other layer of mystery or intrigue or whatever to the idea that Douglas Thomas was a sacrifice of some nature. It can no longer be looked at as a coincidence that he ends up dead on Pennington land. Right? I mean, how is this? If the Penningtons share the same bloodline as the Thomases, what are the odds? How would somebody, never tell me the odds, right? I mean, they gotta be like 1,000,000,000 to 1. It's ridiculous. Right? And his accident is on the 11th of June of all dates, another 66. And I'm willing to bet that June 11th date is pretty close to the summer solstice on some ancient calendar or other. Right? I wouldn't doubt it at all. Regardless of which family you approach it from, both roads lead to the Hansons. And so this is where I'm going to put a pin in this one. I just don't have time to be chasing the Hansons right now because there's still plenty to do on the Penningtons. But I think for now, it's time to get back to the party. All right, and so that's where we'll pick it up in the next episode. Remember, guys, just because you don't know the truth doesn't mean you can't have fun with the lies, right? And so until the next one, cheers.